When we are speaking about the phenomenon of declining churches, we first must see it in perspective. There are a number of denominations or whole cultures that are so accustomed to this phenomenon, declining membership, declining worship attendance, that they seriously believe that this is a global trend, that this is almost a fate that we have to accept, that's unavoidable. Well, on a global level, the very opposite holds true. Christianity, the Church of Jesus Christ, has never grown as rapidly as it does right now. Of course, there are a lot of declining churches on all continents, by the way, but if you compare those churches worldwide that experience growth, in contrast to those that experience decline, you can identify certain patterns of behavior that all growing churches share, and these are the very principles that we have chosen to call natural church development. Those churches haven't learned that from us, but we have learned those principles from them. That is the very essence of the NCD research. We didn't invent it, but we learned it from growing churches. Without any doubt, there are whole cultures, the Western world, Europe in especial, where Christianity is in decline. But even within those cultures, you can identify whole denominations, whole movements that are growing. And if you look at those denominations, you will find out the same principles that these growing denominations share, and these are the principles that we have chosen to call natural church development. If you then look at the churches where at the countries where Christianity is in decline, and look at the denominations that are on average in decline, usually mainline traditional denominations, you again will identify a lot, actually thousands, of individual local churches within these declining movements that are growing. And again, they share the very principles that we have chosen to call natural church development. Why do I stress this so much? Because I want to make it crystal clear that growth or non-growth is not determined by culture or denomination, but by certain clearly identifiable patterns of behavior that can be applied under all circumstances. Of course, in some denominations, they are less frequently or less likely applied than in others, but that is always our decision. It's not a fate. And here's my point. It's our decision whether or not we apply these principles. We can do this. Our research clearly shows that those churches that have launched an NCD process and have done 3 or more surveys have, within a time window of 31 months on average, increased their quality by 6 points and their numerical growth rate by 51%. That's not the signs and wonders category. These are the averages. In other words, it's more likely to expect these results than not to expect them as an outcome of launching such a process. Let me give you an example. In Germany, there is a prognosis that the Protestant successors of the State Church, the EKD, that is already on a historically low level in membership, they have lost millions of people in the past few years, will, by the year 2030, will have reduced its membership by another 50% compared to the present membership. I mean, that is really dramatic. It's the most dramatic process of decrease that we have experienced in church history. And there are always reasons why this happens. Some of these reasons are contextual, and church leaders are not responsible for them because you cannot influence contextual factors, at least not directly. But there are other reasons that are homemade reasons, internal, spiritual, institutional factors that we can influence. For instance, applying those principles that contribute to growth. If we haven't applied them for years, for decades, maybe for centuries, no wonder that we experience the decrease that is experienced right now. Could we reverse the trend? Of course we could. That's not an easy way, I don't say that, but just adapting to this apparently inevitable decline by selling churches maybe to other religions, by firing full-time workers, by reducing your own societal involvement. That's not an easy way either. So I'm not speaking about an easy in contrast to a difficult way, but these are two difficult ways. But one leads you directly to decline, this difficult way, and the other at least has the potential of reversing the trend. There are now a number of very serious church leaders who suggest some quite dramatic bureaucratic adaptations to the consequences of the absence of any substantial reform in their church, because this is church decline. It's the consequence of the absence of any substantial reform. And the funny thing, even the dramatic thing, is that those people who do that are now in our climate called the reformers. You know, I remember that there had been a reformation in Germany several hundred years ago, and to my knowledge that reform was a little bit more creative, more innovative, more future-oriented than simply administrating literally the decline of your movement and call that a reformation. Of course, it would come close to a reformation to train both clergy and laity in how to apply the principles of church development. But it can be done. Thousands of churches have already done it and have seen the results. It's the responsibility of church leaders to initiate and to support such a process. But if you observe the present discussion, the dramatic thing is that this is not even regarded as an option, not even seen as a category. And let me make it very clear. That is poor leadership. That is irresponsible leadership. The facts are there. The secrets, the principles of healthy churches are no secrets any longer, and we have even the support structures in place. We must want to go this way, and then we will see the results. There are many bishops in the Western world. I've spoken with countless of them in the past few years who have launched such a process within their area of responsibility, within their diocese or however the unit is called, and they start to see the corresponding results. And those results are dramatic. I mean, the most frequent way to create curiosity in this process is simply by publishing or presenting those results to their synod or however their meetings are called. And if you look at those churches that are involved in an NCD process and compare them with all the others, if you look at worship attendance, numbers of small groups, finances, ministry to the poor, level of satisfaction, eagerness to win new people, and so on and so forth, and the figures of those churches that are involved with NCD are dramatically higher than in other churches. And you don't have to comment that. You don't have to create strategies how to win other people to launch such a process. Just show them the figures, the results, and then it's up to them to decide, do they want to see the same results or not. I recently spoke to a Lutheran denominational leader in the United States who has gained quite spectacular, encouraging experiences with this process. So literally hundreds of churches within his Lutheran denomination had been influenced by his ministry and have seen the corresponding results. So when we had lunch together with some other denominational leaders from other denominations, some of them got almost a little bit envious and said, what do you do to win the other churches, the majority of Lutheran churches actually, that are not a part of that process yet, to launch such a process? And he replied like this. He said, I don't do anything to win those people. My most important learning principle, he said, is this: learning by envy. Let the others become envious. That is what we are doing. And I believe there is some wisdom in it. You know, rather than saying, please join this process, you would do us a wonderful favor if you did it. People are old and ugly enough to make their own decisions. The facts are there, and it's their decision whether they want it or not. And this is for me an important point. If we want to see growth, we have to apply the principles that contribute to growth. If we do not apply those principles, we do not want growth. You know, if you want to get slim, but do not stick to a healthy diet or do not do regular physical exercises, you do not want to get slim. If you want to have beautiful flowers, but you don't water them regularly, you do not want beautiful flowers. The same holds true from church growth. And I could accept it. No difficulty with it. It wouldn't be my view, but I could accept it if a church leader says, we do not want to experience growth. We want to experience decline. You know, that's a clear position. And I would say, okay, as a church consultant, I'm here to help you to achieve is exactly your goal and to achieve it quickly, if you want this. But if somebody says we want to see growth, but his patterns of behavior are the very opposite of the scientifically identifiable principles that contribute to growth, we must state it like this: he or she does not want to see growth. And in any discussion with bishops and denominational leaders, I ask questions until people either agree, I do not want to see growth, fine, I can accept it, but if they say we want to experience a growth, then I push them and say you are responsible to applying the very principles that contribute to growth.